The first place Google will look is there any search volume on this brand name? So if nobody searches for your brand name, then you're probably not very relevant. Then second thing is, that's been true for years, is how many people link to this website? Is this a normal way? How do people talk about this brand? Do they own a podcast? Do they have a YouTube presence?
I am Caleb Dinsey, a precision ag specialist living in Aurora, South Dakota, and you are listening to the Vance Crowe podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad you're here. Well, today we are going from where we were last week with the commercial sex worker on to this week, Amsterdam, where we are going to talk with a guy that is running a company that helps you interact with Twitter in more and interesting ways. I actually use the company that he works for, Hypefury, and his name is Yannick Veys. I really had no idea what we were going to talk about. I didn't know him. It was actually just a suggestion from Ben Anderson, the guy that's the executive producer on this show, and I really didn't know where it would go. But I'm coming to the conclusion that as long as somebody is interested and open in talking with you, you can have a conversation with them that will always create value. And I've been doing a lot of these private interviews as a way to spend my time and make money while I'm not doing speeches and traveling for that. Although that's actually coming back now. But I've been doing these private interviews and talking with people that are 80 years old and grew up in schools with one room and didn't have electricity and running water. And I'm hearing their stories and I'm recording them for their families to pass on. And the experience that I had during the holiday season of sending these on to the people that recorded them or to the people that bought them as a gift for their grandparents or their children or their wife. And it is one of the most fulfilling things I've done before. It's an experience where people get to record the wisdom that they earned, and they do it by me asking them questions that help them think about things, strike up ideas, recall, and feel comfortable telling stories that they maybe haven't thought about because nobody's asked. So if you're interested in doing one of these private interviews, I highly recommend you go to store.articulate.ventures and click on the private interviews link and see if this is right for you, recording a message to your family or to your future generation, or maybe it's a gift that you want to give to a child or a parent so that way you can remember who they were at this particular time in history. So we're going to head back to the interview with Yannick Veys. I hope you really enjoy this. It's all about how the internet and Twitter works and SEO and how do you find ideas out in the world. Enjoy it, and I'm glad you're here. Yannick Veys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Vance. Thanks for having me.
So I actually know almost nothing about you. The way that I decided to do an interview with you is that I've seen you out in the world. I'm not sure if it's associated with Jack Butcher content, Visualize Value, or just that you're in that milieu. And the other day I was having a meeting with Ben Anderson, who's become my business partner in the last year. And he said, you know who I think you ought to interview? Yannick. And I was like, okay. And we didn't sit down and write out notes or what was I going to ask you about. So I'm flying a little bit blind here, but you use a product or you sell a product that I actually buy, and it's not cheap. It's actually a significant investment called Hypefury. And I started to use it because I wanted to say, how can I make the things that people have interacted with a lot, something that's more available to people that missed it, but would want to see it, without being intrusive, without just, randomly doing it chaotically. And your product lets me do that. So why in the world do you have this company Hypefury, and how did you construct this? And let's just have a good conversation.
That's a good question. I'm happy, by the way, that you didn't prep a lot, because I listened to one of your shows and those were some deep questions. So
which one did you listen to?
Ayala.
Yeah.
Not suitable for work one, because she's a really interesting woman, and I actually also want to do an interview on her, so that's why I listened to her. Yeah. But
and so when you do your podcast, so you have a podcast, do you interview people like commercial sex workers, or are you just strictly in the Twitter space?
No, it's strictly Twitter space. Yeah. But she's also on Twitter. She's mostly on OnlyFans, of course. But yeah, she's interesting. And we're also looking a bit into the OnlyFans world with our product. So that's also why she's interesting for us to talk to.
So what is your product? Explain Hypefury.
Yeah. So it's, if you say it in a couple of words, it's scheduling and automation for people on Twitter. So we go an inch wide but a mile deep in the Twitter sphere, where Buffer and Hootsuite, they go broad on like all social platforms. We go really deep into Twitter. And so basically you start off with just scheduling, but then you could say, okay, I want to have this tweet retweeted after a couple of hours. Or, when this tweet does well, I want to attach a tweet to it, create a thread. So you also already mentioned it, if you want to plug something, your show or something you're selling, you want to do that on a tweet that does really, really well, instead of doing it to every tweet and not getting noticed. And so, we have this auto plug function. We have, evergreen stuff where you can just say, okay, every day at 9 a.m., I want to tweet something from my list of best tweets. So yeah, we go really, really deep into the Twitter sphere.
Why did you choose Twitter to build your empire on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually didn't start Hypefury. I came across the founder, Sammy, on the Indie Hackers forum. He was looking for a guy who could, or girl who could do marketing. And I reached out to him, and yeah, we chatted a bit on WhatsApp and Telegram, and then we got on the phone, and he spoke to a couple of people. And one guy was like, yeah, we're going to raise money and we're going to blow it up and it's going to be great. And the other one was promising, yeah, the American dream. And I was like, I'm from the Netherlands, Europe. I'm a little bit more, let's stay real. We're going to grow the business. We're going to have a lot of fun, but you have to stay real. And yeah, that story resonated the most with him. So then I flew to Paris to meet him. It's just an hour by plane, so it's not that far from me. But yeah, so we had a chat, we had dinner, we just had fun. And then, yeah, we just decided to, I jokingly always say I did like an internship for him just to prove that I wasn't full of shit and that I could do growth. And so for 2 months, I worked on Hypefury for free. Just to show, that I could grow the company, which I did.
Man, that's balls. That is balls, man. That is saying I trust what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right
so yeah. So there were a couple of things. I was thinking, hey, should I put? So I can either I go all in, but if I lose, I didn't say, hey, I want X amount of money. If you say no anyway, I was like, I'm just gonna. I know I can do this. I'm gonna prove myself, and there's no way in hell he's gonna say no. So that was basically my attitude, and that's how I landed a partnership with him. And yeah, we're now. I'm the co-founder, he's the founder, and yeah, we have a nice structure going. Yeah.
When I think about the American dream, right, we're kind of told that the dream is that you can decide whatever you want to be and go out and get it, and that's the joy of America and freedom. So it's really interesting to me that this is the mentality that you have as a person from the Netherlands. So are we mistaken in believing that that is somehow, American-centric value, or is that also a European, or is it a new generational thing?
I don't know. It's funny that you're asking this because I was thinking about your Peter Thiel question that might come up later. I don't know. But I think a lot of people are coasting through life, and if you ask them, they'll say, no, I'm not coasting through life because this or that. They give excuses or, they're just coasting through life for real. So I've only worked for a little over 2 years as an employee, and the rest of my life, working life, which, it's like, 15 years now or something like that, has been like working for myself, as a contractor, as owning my own business. And I've had, real business before besides just contracting, which is, a different type, I guess. But yeah, so for me, it's pretty normal, but I don't see a lot of people having the same mentality here in the Netherlands, Europe versus, if you go to San Francisco or neighborhoods like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something about like the hustle culture, right? And like, there's a weird, if you're not involved in it, I think Jack Butcher is probably at the peak of one of these mountains, but it's this concept of not necessarily working just as hard as you possibly can, unrelenting, don't take breaks and stay up all night, but more of this, like, what is the joy of becoming a craftsman that you can show up to work, deliver your best, which is hard work, and then set it down, but also have an enriched other life so that way your work is better.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So this mindset, I guess, that came from, I did like a management traineeship at a big Dutch bank, like one of the biggest, and I hated it. So I had a fixed term contract for 1.5 years, and I quit after 9 months. I had to pay a big tuition fee to leave. Court shit. It was really a lot of hassle, but I was still like, yeah, do I want to stay here for 9 more months and avoid a fee, but also stay miserable, or just say, fuck it, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do something else? And I choose the latter. And yeah, ever since that, I've just seen that if you take the plunge, take the risk, then, within, I think, 6 months, I had repaid the tuition fee. I jumped into a new thing, it was just, yeah, for me, it was mind opening. And that's, I think, the reason that I'm so, yeah, I just jump into new things, and it's not a threat to me. It's something, yeah, I see everything as an opportunity.
Well, the observation that you made about the other companies like Hootsuite and these other things that are saying, we're going to help you with your branding and your marketing, we're going to help you in all of the areas. I had never even considered the fact that you could become an expert in one domain. That focus is really important. It's like, I think one of my greatest temptations in life is to not be focused. It's like an indulgence that I have, that I'm going to go explore something new. So how did you guys come to the conclusion that Twitter was the thing you were going to focus on?
Yeah, so Sammy asked a question on Twitter. He just asked, hey, is there a scheduler where you can schedule threads? And there were none. And that's when he thought, hey, man, this is something I need to build. And I actually wasn't very active on Twitter back then. I had 600-700 followers or something. That's a year back. I have now almost 8,000. He was very active on Twitter. He knew quite a few, people with a lot of followers on Twitter. And they responded to that, and that resonated. And he was like, man, if this little thing, just building a thread schedule, that's not a big thing. You can do that. He literally built that in a couple of days, I think, and launched it. And then, all these people jumped on the bandwagon, and they wanted to be in the beta. They wanted to, give their feedback. And that's how ultimately the small product grew into a bigger thing. And yeah, we don't want to compete with Buffer and Hootsuite because, one, they have a lot more money than we. And two, I think, yeah, you have to carve out your own space in a market. And I think that's what we're good at. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people on Twitter that want a product like this. They're focused solely on Twitter, or, they do Twitter and maybe one or two other things. But Twitter is such a big market for us, at least, that, we can double down on that and we can build new stuff for years to come.
The thought that I have, so I checked out Hootsuite and these other things over the years. I've worked in marketing, and, I'm always thinking about how to have the most natural experience for the person I'm trying to interact with. But when you go to Hootsuite or something like that, it's like looking at a remote that an engineer built. The remote that your grandma has, where she tapes off all the buttons except for the two that you're wondering, only use this one and only use this one, because all these buttons do something, but it'll only screw it up and you won't get it back. And that was the reverse on like the Apple remote, right? Where the simplicity and the focus on just move it around this screen. That's what I think of when I look at your product. Like, the design of it is sleek enough that I don't actually have to know very much in order that I can use it. And I think that that is where software becomes craftsman work, right? Where the person puts it on and it already fits.
Yeah, that's true. And we've put a lot of time and money into building a great UI. I think we can still do better. And yeah, the hard thing about building a great UI is that, you build it in a point in time where you just don't know where it's going to be in a year's time. And so, yeah, that's one of the things we're really working on, and say, okay, hey, we're still going to build this and this and this, and how is this going to fit in, our dashboard right now? That's a big thing for us. But yeah, I think probably 5 years ago, design wouldn't have been such a big thing, but I think it's probably the most important thing you do when you build a new product is just make it look good, make it look intuitive, and yeah, have people enjoy using your product. That's why we have a focus mode and the dark mode and stuff like that, which people probably wouldn't even care about a couple of years ago.
When I was working in corporate America, and you see them trying to be like, hey, let's put a website together to tell people everything we want them to know. And then everyone that comes to the table says, I get a page or I get my own section, right? And so you end up having this thing where maybe everybody comes with the best intentions because they want to think that what they're working on is important, but it has nothing to do with, I am a person that has a question that your answer is better for than all the other answers. And instead they just keep throwing more and more stuff in there. And so you see the internet like not being valued for the sleekness that it has, but the fact that it could just be a giant repository to throw all kinds of stuff that no one will ever read.
Yeah. And I've been a contractor for years, and I've seen this at big Dutch banks where they're fighting for homepage spots while they're not looking at, okay, what value are we bringing? How much money does this versus that bring in? And I've seen the same happen to the Dutch Costco. It's the same thing. Everybody wants to be on the homepage. Everybody wants a page, but they're not thinking of what does the user want? What does he want to see? Instead of, we want to look at the website as something internal. Everybody wants a spot on it. And yeah, it's a real pain in the ass.
So with you working on Twitter, do you have any concerns about, Twitter right now is in an era where they knock people out or they may become something different than what they are. And so your business model, all of your real estate being built on a place where they could make a decision about how their API interfaces or anything, and you're knocked out. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I'm not really worried. I think they need us. Well, not necessarily us, but people who use the API. I think we just, allow more people to use Twitter. And it's a bit the same with, tools that help with SEO like Ahrefs and SEMrush and stuff like that. They actually go 100% against Google's terms of service, but they still, scrape Google and do stuff like that. So even for businesses like that, they don't get shut down because they also know the Googles and the Bings of this world. They just know that we need those businesses to help us, stay relevant in the search marketing world.
So the internet is a funny thing because the way it's constructed is what information gets brought up when somebody asks a question. And I think that we can lose the idea that just because Google says this is the number one answer doesn't necessarily mean that is actually the best answer on the internet. It just means that it was the easiest one for the system to find. Tell us about SEO in this modern age, because the last time I checked in on SEO, it was like 5 years ago, and I'm sure it has radically shifted since then.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what I've been seeing and what the search world has been seeing is that, like 5 or 6 years ago, you could still rank on, pretty high volume keywords with a small brand. But these days, it's not so much about, all the nitty gritty things you can do to rank higher. It's far more about, how big is your brand? And they look at so much more as in, authority and trustworthiness instead of, this website is totally optimized for this keyword. It has, the keyword in the domain name and in the URL, blah, blah, blah. So it's way more about being a brand and then ranking versus having the best optimized page and ranking.
What does it mean to have a brand that like Google can see? Because it's different than having a brand where you put it up on a billboard and people drive by it. It's something altogether written for a different being almost.
I think how to be a brand is just look at the biggest businesses out there and see where are they. So they're everywhere. So the first place Google will look is there any search volume on this brand name? So if nobody searches for your brand name, then you're probably not very relevant. Then second thing is that's been true for years is how many people link to this website. Is this a normal way? How do people talk about this brand? Do they own a podcast? Do they have a YouTube presence? Where are they? What are they doing?
Those get factored together.
Well, I'm not saying that. Let's start off. I don't have any proof of that, but I do think that Google is smart enough to factor stuff like that into how important is a brand and how trustful is a brand. Yeah.
So if you're focused on Twitter and you've been really kind of thinking about how people use it in order that you can design a system for them to use, what is it that you have learned about Twitter that even heavy users don't realize is the way the thing works?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you can have heavy users with lots of followers, with 1 million+ followers, but they have shit engagement. And so there's a difference between being a brand on Twitter and understanding what resonates on Twitter. I think that's the most important thing. I have okay-ish engagement versus, I know a lot of brands that really have shit engagement. So they are more in the, and that's something you talked about before, is, they just want to broadcast, this department wants to say this on Twitter, that department wants to say that on Twitter. And I think that's, the wrong way to go about. And I think, every time you share something on Twitter, you have to realize, am I adding value to the conversation or am I taking something? And that's, I sometimes use the term brand bank, am I putting something in my brand bank as in delivering value to people, or am I detracting something from my brand bank as in taking people's time with just a broadcast message with, buy my product, stuff like that, which, it just doesn't work on Twitter.
Yeah, I am ruthless about unfollowing people as soon as they start talking about things that are that cloud my thinking, right? Like I think of opening Twitter as like, I'm taking the most valuable thing in the world that I own, my attention, and I'm putting it at this box. So show me things that are going to make it so I make better decisions. I think about things better. And so when somebody's sitting there being like, look at these bagels I ate today, I'm like, get that shit out of here. I don't want to see any of that. And that's why I think almost no I follow almost no corporate accounts, because they don't actually care about the engagement or the interaction that I have on there. So why would I follow name the corporation? It just doesn't fit for the way I use Twitter.
Yeah, same here. I don't think I follow many brands. It's more like I follow like the Google Webmaster notification, stuff like that, because I want to know. That's it's part of what I do. But besides that, I don't even follow Nike. But I think they're probably one of the better brands on Twitter. But I'm very selective on who I follow.
I also think that they're like so. How do you get your news? How do you decide who you follow? How do you decide what's worth your attention? Yeah,
that's a good question. I do two things. So I'm also a little bit selfish, as in I look at how many followers does another person has, but I also look at you have a lot of people that just reply to your tweet, wow, this is great, fantastic, blah blah blah, and then I think, well, thank you for the compliment, but you can also just like my tweet. And so I'm looking for people that also add value to the conversation. I also don't know everything, and if I can learn something from somebody else, that's if people put out great threads that I love, I retweet and usually follow those people, because I think you have something worthwhile to say.
Do you ever put content out that you find some people disagree with?
So yes, and I have an interesting example that I tweeted something once. What exactly did I tweet? Something like, don't quit like a little girl. And the little girl part, that was, I got a lot of DMs from that tweet. They were saying, it was really about a gender thing, And so I got a lot of replies under that tweet saying, "Man, what are you doing? You're effing up your how do you say that? Your brand, your personal brand, I guess."
Wow.
People DMing me, and so you sometimes have to be a little bit careful about what you tweet. I think you can be a little bit controversial because that also gets you engagement on Twitter. But on that account, and I've had people messaging me before saying what you're saying, but on this account, I decided to actually delete that tweet, even though I have a 6-year-old daughter. It wasn't about boy or girl, it was more about
a turn of phrase.
Yeah, turn of phrase. But somehow the replies and the DMs, they hit me. So I decided, well, okay, let's just remove it and move on.
Oh man, you got to be able to take the heat. You got to be. The other day, I was really annoyed because I put out this blog, and I used Hypefury to take a couple of clips of that blog and run a short thread of it. I would never have done that if I was sitting there and had to do it right at the moment I was doing it, but that way I could set it up in advance. And because I put it out there, I got a bunch of really good engagement. A bunch of people read the blog, people wrote me about it. It prompted good conversation that I appreciated. And then this woman that I think is just a nice person showed up and was like, I was shaking my head the whole time. This is, ridiculous. And then the cascading on effect of being like, this is clearly just clickbait for a podcast. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm totally down for you giving me a response for what you don't like. Just tell me what you don't like about this. And the responses are all just this is so dumb. And I'm like, who takes their time to go around to other people's things and be like, nuh-uh? So for me, I want people to disagree with me. I don't have a problem in the world but just articulate the disagreement. That's all I care about. If you're not going to articulate the disagreement, then you're worthy of blocking because you're just throwing noise, like you had said earlier. I don't want people to show up and bark at me. I want people to show up and be like, "This is why you're wrong, you idiot."
Yeah, no, true. That's a good nuance. And I don't know what the reason was. I removed that tweet. Normally I don't. I think that that was probably the only tweet I ever removed because people were, I don't know. Yeah, something just to tick.
But I've been there. You also say something that is a cultural turn of phrase, and we look at our parents and we say, "Hey, those are some phrases that they just don't work." And I'm definitely not above thinking "Hey, there are some cultural nuances that evolve over time." So I that's not me giving you crap over removing that tweet. I remember I did a podcast with a good friend of mine, and I opened it by talking about her homosexuality because it was a joke, right? It's a joke between me and her that we've had all the time. And right after it happened, people were like, "Why did you make that the focus of your interview? Why was that the big?" Oh, and I was like, that was a throwaway line. I didn't even mean it. This is something clearly that doesn't matter between us, but you're yeah. I don't know why I did that. If I could have removed it without removing the whole podcast, I would have.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So in your stuff, you in your Twitter, I was scrolling through there, and you had this whole thing on gossip, which I thought was an interesting way to approach people talking about you. Yeah,
it's funny. Yeah, so. So I have some people around me who gossip a lot. I don't really gossip at all. So I get some kind of allergic reaction when people gossip, because then I think, I always ask, have you told that person? And then, 99% of the time they say no. And then I'm like, but why? So for the one thing is it our problem or is it their problem? That's the first thing. So do you want to upset yourself about somebody else? That's, I think, the first important question you have to ask yourself. And then the second thing is, if you have just a little bit of, love for that person, tell it to him or her, and it'll help him, you know. So that's why I'm about that gossiping thing. I think just be open and help people. I get.
Do you come from a culture of directness? I mean, because what you're basically saying is directness pays dividends, and you know, don't wait around for it. Do you yourself have that level of directness, or you just don't have that many opinions about other people?
I have that level of directness. Yeah. And that's also a cultural thing. I don't think in the US you'll have a lot of people that do that, but I only have a limited amount of knowledge of the US culture, of course, but that's just, so I am pretty open about what I think of other people. And, you know, I tell them, as in not, you know, you're shit at this. I'm saying, hey, this is what I see. So I'm just trying to be also gentle in the way I bring it, but yeah, not everybody likes that, but I prefer telling it anyway. You know, it's just, I always see feedback as like a present. You know, you get the present, you can either just put it in a closet, don't look at it. You can open it up and really dig in deep and see, okay, what can I do with that? But not everybody agrees with me on that. So, yeah.
Well, so in international, so I studied diplomacy, and one of the ways that you can cut across different societies to make comparisons to say, what should you expect in this environment? And one of them is high context versus low context. So high context cultures are the honor cultures of like Asia, right? So you say a few words, but you really have to learn what is the context that those words are being said in. And oftentimes it's extremely indirect, like so that because in an honor culture, you have to really avoid besmirching somebody, making them exposed to ridicule, because you only have your reputation. That's what things are built on. But the Western world predominantly has a much lower context where you say what you mean and you can be direct because it's more of a meritocracy. You're trying to base your decisions based on, you know, what are you producing? What are you doing for me right now is one of the trade-offs, is that people want to hear what you have to say, but they want to know, you know, what's your value right now? And that doesn't really happen in the Eastern cultures. Does that strike you as accurate? Like Germany, the Nordic countries being more low context?
Yeah, it does. It does. And there's like a famous story about a Dutch, I don't know if I think he was CEO back then of Philips, so a pretty big business also in the US. And he had lunch or dinner with a Chinese business partner, and they both went to the bathroom at the same time. And, you know, they were there. The Dutch guy washed his hands, but the Chinese man didn't. So the Dutch guy said something about that. He said, why don't you wash your hands? And, you know, that was the end of their partnership, because, you know, that Chinese man, he was just like, what the F are you saying? He still replied something like, you know, Chinese men don't pee over their hands, something like that. But still, you know, the tone was set and the deal was over, you know. So yeah, that's the difference. And as a Dutch guy, you could probably make a joke about that. So, hey, why didn't you wash your hands? Or we don't even think about not washing our hands, I guess. But Chinese, they just have, they're different about washing hands and I guess hygiene maybe in general. And they're as you say, you know, you have to really be careful about what you say to them.
Yeah, and I think that if you've never lived in a culture that has a different context than you, then you're not really fully aware of it. Like the first time I ever went to Germany or interacted a lot with Germans, and they just say exactly what they're thinking, like, You do not look like you slept last night. You know, like, well, that's true. I just don't know that I would have ever thought to say that. And they're like, hey, I'm trying to let you know you don't look very good. You should probably be better rested. And so, like, those first experiences that you have in that cross-cultural misconception, man, they are jarring. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest ones for me is the different cultural concepts of time. So, you know, we have monochronic time in the Western world. The world starts at 8, the markets close at 3, you know, these types of ideas. Whereas in like an African country, a polychronic time, they are way more value relationships than they do are things going according to order. And so when I was living in Africa, people would show up 2 hours late to something, and it would be as though they came up to me and spit in my eye. You know, like, why would you wait so long? And that is, time is an interesting cultural concept.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. I had a couple of conversation with a woman from India, and she was late every time, and I said something about that. But yeah, I don't think it's definitely a cultural thing. She was 15 minutes late twice, and I was like, yeah, but our meeting started at 2. So if you're late, just, I don't mind. Just, send me a message. But it's just, it was a little bit of a mismatch. Yeah.
But this is how the world goes round. And I think that that's one of the things about Twitter being a predominantly literal context, right? You really only have the letters that you read. Now, you can have photographs and emojis, but for the most part, we've stripped down communication so that it is completely unadorned. But the weird thing is, Twitter is also an honor culture. So we've got way low context. People are saying what they think or as direct as they can, but you're living in a world where your reputation is the reason people follow you or leave you behind. So it's almost like the worst of both worlds. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, but then I still think, you don't have to follow people. If you don't agree with them, I just be honest with them. Don't just say, hey, I disagree, but, keep an honest conversation going. And, if you really don't like it, just don't follow them anymore or block them. And yeah, in the end, I think, if you keep spreading value and choose what kind of people you want to attract. I think that's also an important part of Twitter. And you can't be a friend of everybody. So choosing a niche, I guess, or it's a slice of the pie. I think that's important.
Yeah, almost by default, if you're going to provide value to someone, that's because you have an idea that they didn't have. And that often means that they're going to somehow come in contravenance with other people's thinking.
Yeah.
In your tweet about gossip, you used a word that I use often, which is transcend. Like, you should transcend gossip. What does that word mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it also goes back to that. I think that a lot of people coast through life, and that you can, be amazed about what you can accomplish. Maybe not in a year, but in a couple of years. And so, I always like to pressure myself into, getting better every day. I do that. I do the same thing to my girlfriend. She doesn't really like it, but after my dad passed away, and I bought her a business. Why? Because she was in a shitty job, and she was like, yeah, well, okay, I'll do this. But it was more like, because the job she was doing, she hated it. So it was more like, anything is better than this. But it took her like 4 years to really settle into like the entrepreneurship. And only starting this year, we actually started renting an office. We were running her business from our house with the kids and stuff. It was just, hard. And now we started renting an office. And this year, it finally, I don't know, it struck her that she can actually, she makes more money than, and she only has to work like 1 hour a day, but she makes more money than, most people her age and her, I think that's, she never expected to do something like that. So, and it took 4 years. I don't know. I'm not saying I pressed her for 4 years, go. But finally, after years, she realized that, hey, this is so much better than what I did, and I can really create something great out of this. And I think everybody can do that. If you just look around at things you enjoy doing, start a small business in that. There's so much opportunity these days. And I think that's one of the simplest things you can do to transcend yourself. You can still be in your comfy life with your comfy salary and job, but you can still, do something else and just try stuff.
I did the same thing where I left a job that was very lucrative, but I realized like they were not going to let me do the things that I wanted to do. And one of the cautions that I have for people of jumping out of one thing and jumping into another is, you won't magically be a different person because you did it. The thing that will change is that now you have to survive, right? So you are jumping in the water, and there are things that you can do to have yourself mentally be prepared to have the energy to swim. Do you have good habits that let you like keep this attitude going?
I think I have to work on my habits. Yeah, so I have pretty good habits, but I do think that, for instance, eating wise, I think my habits are pretty shit. So I need to improve on that. But like work ethics, habits wise, I think pretty decent. Now, I don't have a lot of systems, so that's something I need to work on. Yeah, so planning and stuff like that, that's not really a good thing. And that's also, once you plan, you get into habits. So that's one thing.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. That once you make a plan, you get into habits. It almost is like if you start executing on the plan, the habit will come.
Yeah, it's you can't just, if you do something once, that's not a habit. That's just, and I work too much from my head, so I have to put down stuff. So yeah, we started using something with Hypefury, so I can finally jot down everything I have in my head and create a plan and, assign other people to it. So it's an accelerator for our business, but also for me to get things out of my head and into like a plan that we can execute on.
How has Hypefury grown since you did your 2 months of working as an intern?
Yeah, so yeah, we started at like 1K MRR, something like that when I just started, and we're now at about 12. So in a year time, we've went times 12, I guess. Yeah, so that's pretty decent. So overall, we grow about 10% month over month. So, and we're self-funded. Sammy and I don't take any salary yet, so we put everything back into.
You're growing by 10% every month?
Yep.
Man, that has to be exciting around there. Like that's still at the level of like we're hitting the bell every time we get a sale, but it's starting to get a little loud in here, so we may not hit the bell every single time.
Yeah. No, we're happy. We set a little bit higher goal and then we actually reached. We wanted to hit 15K at the end of the year, but yeah, we're still pretty happy. And yeah, our product has also matured enough that we can really go and get some more people. Right now, it's more of a organic growth. We do a lot of, sales through word of mouth. People see, when you click on a tweet from Hypefury, you can actually see that it was tweeted through Hypefury. We do a lot through affiliate marketing. And I think 2021 is going to be a year where we can really capitalize on the fact that we have a pretty decent product, more than decent product. And I think, we have a bit more firepower marketing wise. So that's going to be an exciting year for us.
And when you think about what 2021 will have in it, like, last year, if we were sitting here at the end of 2019 saying, I think there's going to be an epic pandemic and I think these things are going to happen. How do you think the waves in 2021 will be as large as the ones in 2020 were?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah. So the entire world's getting vaccinated right now, except our country, I guess. We're only starting in a couple of weeks. But so I think
you guys are waiting? Why are you waiting?
Well, not necessarily waiting, but we don't have our shit in order. So somehow we wanted to vaccinate everybody in tiny spots. But the Pfizer vaccine, they come in boxes of 1,000 doses. And so, if you go to like a elderly home where, I don't know, 50, 100, probably not more than that, people are, then it's a bit crazy to go there with your 1,000 dose box. And they didn't think about that. So now
and because of the freezing requirements, it's like if you open that thing up, then you got to inject it right now.
Yeah, something like that. So they just thought, hey, we'll create, smaller boxes and stuff like that. But that didn't work out. So right now they're actually ramping up like bigger facilities. So yeah, I think the new date is now the 11th or the 18th of January or something like that. So yeah. And we're top 5.
Who knows? If there's a hiccup with it, then maybe you guys will be the ones that get to watch it happen. But okay, so if the vaccine comes, does that mean the waves get smaller, or does that mean the waves get bigger because people rush out of their houses and we see something?
Yeah, so I don't think a lot is going to change. As in, it's already happened. As in, people, you can name any number of examples. What happened to Amazon? Probably the Costco's and stuff like that. It's same happened here in the Netherlands. App use of traditional businesses, it's tripled. So I think the wave already happened. And I think, besides the fact that we can, eat out and go to the gym again and stuff like that, I think the change, like the big wave has already happened. And we're going to ride, I think the internet in general is going to ride that wave for probably years to come. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting that the wave is already there. We're surfing on it right now, but that we don't really know what the full effects are. That's interesting. I mean, I had a philosophy a long time ago that grocery stores would eventually go away, or at least the large parking lots of them, because right now in the US, for every square foot you have of grocery space, you generally have to have X amount of parking. And the parking isn't for all of the time. It's for like the rush times, like right after work or right after church or something like that, where a bunch of people are there. But if you take out a huge percentage of that, let's say 20% of that by online grocery shopping, which I think is probably a lot higher than that, because I almost never go to the grocery store now, then the physical space that we're living in will start changing. And whoever leverages that or spots that the quickest is going to have opportunities to do things with physical space that we haven't done in the past.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that's an interesting. I think, I'm still seeing a lot of office buildings being built, and I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. I think they better start remodeling for residential space instead of just trying to sell that stuff or rent it, because I don't think it's going to happen.
You think people will keep working from home?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think traffic-wise, it's better. Health-wise, it's better. It's just, who doesn't want to work at home? At least when your kids can also go to daycare or school or whatever. I don't think there are many people who disagree with that. And I also think that, the bosses, quote unquote, just have seen that, hey, this works as well. You don't have to see each other every day. You don't have to be physically in the building. You can, work at home.
You got a lot less sexual assault or what, like you got a lot less sexual harassment in the workplace. You got a lot less arguments among people in a certain context. The ones where people are coming in contact with one another, all that is out the window.
Yeah.
What do you think is lost by a society that stops interacting at work like that? Is there any danger here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I wouldn't say, hey, don't go to the office at all, because I think if you don't literally meet your coworkers, and if you just, if everything is on the screen, I think, I wouldn't necessarily say that poses a danger, but I think you still need the interaction. When it actually started, I was like, I'll keep going to the office. I'll keep going. And now I'm like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm talking to everybody through Zoom or through whatever. So I don't see a big threat. I do think that, you shouldn't stay at home all the time. No.
Yeah, I work from home. I work out at home. I have like a basic gym I've built here, so my friends come to work out. I hold not a lot of meetings here because I don't want a bunch of people in my house. But so I have adapted it. But I also see like the willpower it takes to keep, like one of the big things I think about the holidays is that the holidays mark time for you, right? You like wake up and you're like, oh, it's not just 40 degrees out now, it's cold, it's below zero, and we're happy about it and we're doing things. It marks time, it brings people together. But when you work from home and you're seeing only the same things every day, I think you run the real danger of having it be like Groundhog's Day, and that is actually a form of hell, I think, to have so little change in your life that you're not seeing how the world around you is changing.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's also what happened to my girlfriend a little bit, that she was always at home. Either she was, trying to work in between the kids, or she was, with the kids, and her world was just so small. So yeah, I think it's very important to keep going out and not feel like you're chained to your house, which, we're on lockdown now for, well, hopefully only another 2-3 weeks, but it already, it closes your world off so much. You know, we're getting our grandparents to take care of our kids as well, because otherwise, you know, we literally go crazy. You know, we're not used to having our kids around for, you know, 6 weeks at a time, full time. So it's really, it's a heavy burden somehow. Yeah.
So you have a 6-year-old daughter. I have a 4-month-old daughter. So I'm a new dad that happened during coronavirus. As you think about the distance between 4 months to 6 years, what's one piece of advice you have from one dad to another about something I should be observing or watching for?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, we have 2 kids, one 6 and one 3-year-old. And our daughter, when she was 4 months old, she got eczema, and it was really, really bad. And here in the Netherlands, you have like a system where you go to, well, it's not really a doctor, but it's people, you know, they check out how your kid is doing, your young born, you know, how weight wise, height wise, stuff like that. I don't know if they have it in the US, but anyway, she was having eczema, and we asked those people, you know, hey, what do we do? And they were just like, well, just put some, I don't know what the English word is, Vaseline. It's just oil. Just put something on, and it will go away. And we were like, okay, well, let's do that. But it was months and months, and it kept getting worse. And you know, all of a sudden, I was like, well, you know, this ain't gonna fly, man. I have to do something about it. So I called her GP. And I said I wanted an appointment in the hospital because it was getting so bad. And at first they were like, but why? And can't you go to, you know, the people we always see, you know, like the normal where everybody goes? So I was like, well, no. So I got mad on the phone, and we finally got the reference we needed to go to the hospital. And when we came to the hospital with our daughter, that the women who like the receptionist at the department, you know, the skin department, the dermatology, she almost started crying when she saw her daughter. It was that bad. And she literally said, if she wasn't looking so clear out of her eyes, I would have taken her in, you know. She had to go to, you know, the ICU or whatever. It was that bad. So the advice I'm giving you is, you know, keep an open mind, and don't think that like the general, you know, medicine world knows everything, and just, look out for your kids. And if you think, hey, there's something fishy about it, there has to be something else we can do here, do it, you know, and just push through the system and just say, hey, F you, I want something to help. And literally we got a something to put on her body, and in 2 days time it was all gone, you know. So it's just,
wow. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things that until you have a child, seeing them suffer in some way, like, it's not the same when you see your sibling or your parent or your best friend, when it's like, I'm the one that brought this one into this world. Like, I've got to do something, and she literally can't do it herself. It's a different level of, it probably is some form of transcension, like the ability to take out of your mind and feel such a desire to help for something that can't help itself. But it's also a very, very vulnerable feeling. Like the first time I had to give my daughter droplets in her mouth, it was so painful. But once I found out, like, oh, this helps, now I'm like, hold her down, let's get it in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, the medical world, you know, they held us at bay for months, and I was like, what do I do? You know, and we went the alternative route, even, you know, at some crazy doctor where we had little droplets of blood taken from her. It was like, you know, homeopathic stuff. I don't know what's that called in English, but anyway, like really alternative stuff, because we just wanted anything. And of course it didn't work, but yeah, if you're
so you have to have permission to go to the doctor, essentially?
Well, not permission to go to the doctor, but you have to get permission to go to the hospital. As in, it's because the insurance system here, you know, we pay 120 euros a month, and you know, we can go crazy bill wise, but you have to have a reference to go. Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting thing. Like, it's hard for me to compute what that's like. So if you have a gunshot wound, you don't have to go get permission, right?
No. So it's for non-emergency stuff. You can go to the physical therapist without any. You could just go there. But a lot of stuff in the Dutch healthcare system is restricted. Because you can. Yeah, I have chest pain. I'm gonna call the heart surgeon. No, it doesn't work like that. You go to your GP. He checks you out, and then when he says, "Hey, yeah, it's time for you to go there," then you can go. That's how it works.
Okay, so at the end of 2021, you think the wave we will have ridden for a while. You're like talking about habits. As you think about the end of this year and like what you would want to remember about it next year, what's something that is important for you to record and say, hey, don't forget, this is something that happened this year that I think is important to remember in the future?
Well, we've seen tremendous change. Everybody has probably had some sort of effect on their life because of Corona. And I guess, on the one hand, people are going crazy because they have to stay indoors. On the other hand, 60, 80 years ago when we had World War II, my grandfather was in a bunker here in Europe, in freezing temperature for weeks, and he wasn't complaining. So I guess there are a couple of things that, stay close to your core, but also, we are so resilient as a species. You can say that. Find a way instead of an excuse. I think that's an important thing. It's just, the couple of weeks, it's shit that you have to stay indoors, and it'll probably happen again next year. There'll be new waves probably. So, yeah.
I like that message. I think it's good. And, the right habits or the things that get you into the right mind space and the right health, those are all the things that make you the most resilient that you can be. So I'm totally in agreement. Well, Yannick, it was very interesting talking with you. I had no idea where this would lead, and I feel like I talked to a brethren in some way. So it's really nice to meet you, and I hope to see Hypefury just keep killing it in the future.
Thank you.
If people wanted to get a hold of you or to learn more about what you think about or how Hypefury works, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to hypefury.com, hypefury.com, and you can find me on Twitter. That's Yannick Veys, YANNICK_VEYS.
Well, cool, man. I'll throw those links in the description. So, Yannick, great to see you, and have a happy 2021.
You too, Vance. Thanks for having me. It was great fun.